Hello, welcome to Financial Insider Weekly. I'm your host, Michael Gray, CPA. My guest today is California State Assembly member Jim Beall. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Oh, Beall.
Beall, okay, sorry, Beall. So, anyway, let me give you a little information about Assemblymember Beall. He was born and raised in Santa Clara County. His parents still live here. And he had 9 brothers and sisters. It was a full house there. He graduated from San Jose State University. Actually went to high school at Bellarmine Prep School. He served for 12 years on the Santa Clara County as a supervisor, and also served for 14 years on the San Jose City Council. So altogether, he had 26 years of experience in local government. Currently, as I said, he is a representative at California State Assembly, and he is on the Budget Committee, and he's on the Revenue and Taxation Committee. So he's well qualified to talk about the subject that we're talking about today, which is California's annual budget crisis. And this is something that we read about in the news, but I thought that after meeting Assemblymember Beall, that it would be worthwhile to talk with him to get some of his thoughts on this. Anyway, so thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Love to be here.
So let's get into this a little bit. One thing I do, for a little context for you folks, because you're going to be seeing this at different times, today is July 30th. It's Friday, July 30th, 2010, and we are late again with our budget. So the first question, why does California have a budget stalemate almost every year?
Well, I've been on the State Assembly representing San Jose for 3.5 years.
Yes.
And I found out one thing, as opposed to the County Board of Supervisors and the City Council, there's 120 legislators, and they don't always agree with everything, but nevertheless, everybody has a different set of values.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons, but essentially in California we have a state constitutional provision that requires a 2/3 approval of the state budget. We're one of only 3 states in the country that require that. I think that's one of the main problems that exists, because I think it's very difficult to get 2/3 of the legislature, no matter what party, to agree on anything. And
Yes.
I think that's probably your most difficult challenge. We also have, I'd like to point out this year, we have, for several years we've had a governor, Governor Schwarzenegger. He's a very unique, independent-minded governor.
Yes.
And he has no, how'd you say, sway with the legislators from his party.
Uh-huh.
So we're sort of having Democrats, Republicans in the Assembly and in the state Senate. And then we have a governor who doesn't really get along with either side. And I think that enables, the 2/3 vote rule enables like a small group of legislatures to really control the process by making demands in terms of approving the budget. So that's part of our problem. A lot of those things that they demand prior to getting the budget approved are very distasteful kinds of things. Like recently we had a budget that was approved. They requested, and they said we have to have this or we won't vote for it. $900 million worth of tax breaks right in the middle of a depression, and a budget that had to be cut like tens of billions of dollars. They want tax breaks.
Uh-huh.
So it was quite a difficult challenge. I'd rather spend that $900 million on schools,
Yes.
school programs that were cut tremendously. In the last 3 years, the budget went from $106 billion to $82 billion. So it's really gone down. The spending has really gone down. and schools got cut about $17 billion.
Yeah, that's a lot for schools.
Yeah, it's about 2/3 of the, or excuse me, about 25% of the state allocation was reduced in those 3.5 years.
Uh-huh.
So I think these are very difficult times, and consensus is difficult with the 2/3 vote.
Yeah. So it's a little bit like having the tail wag the dog when you have this small group that really has an unbalanced ability to sway that.
Yeah, and then another rule is that we have like term limits.
Mm-hmm.
That's another problem, I believe. You know, just based on my experience on the County Board of Supervisors and the City Council, legislators can only serve in the Assembly only 6 years, and in the Senate 8. So as a result of that, the average term of an assemblyman, I think, is like a little less than 3 years.
Uh-huh.
So really, there's no experience developed.
Uh-huh.
So what's left is you have staff, lobbyists, other people that really control the process a lot more than your directly elected representatives, and that's a real problem.
Yeah. So in other words, you have to rely on your staff or team members, whatever you want to call them, basically to orient you about what's going on in this process.
Yeah, and I think in coming up with compromises, solutions, working with people in terms of knowing the people, everybody's a complete stranger to one another.
Yeah.
And the knowledge base is not high because we're only serving a short period of time. So I think that's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next item is relates to the initiative process. So in California, we have sort of a unique system here where we can actually have our voters enact constitutional reforms. So does that California initiative process contribute to our budget problems?
I think it contributes to a constitutional crisis. I favor a constitutional convention to completely redo the state constitution. I think that's what's needed.
Wow.
The Constitution of California is the second longest constitution in the world. I think India has a longer one. That's what I've been told.
Uh-huh.
But because in the early 20th century we had sort of progressive movement reforms, Theodore Roosevelt, Hiram Johnson, governor of California, made these reforms that allowed an initiative system. And in California, that has morphed to a way of expressing hyper-partisanship in the state government. So one side gets an initiative passed, and then the other side gets an initiative passed, and it sort of becomes a tit-for-tat kind of
a competitive situation.
Yeah, and the losers really are the people, because they're electing people to represent them to do a good job in Sacramento, but the initiatives are just, tying the legislators' hands by restricting their ability to have flexibility to balance the budget, and that creates a big problem.
Well, we've even seen, of course, initiatives are come sometimes from the governor, or maybe even sponsored by some of the legislators themselves, as a way, I guess, sort of making an end run around the process of working through the legislature.
Yeah, and a lot of the initiatives have no deliberative evaluation, so we don't know what the fiscal impact are, and there's no requirement that they come up with the money to pay for the initiative, so that's a problem too. I mean, all these initiatives that say you want to do this, you want to do that, and everybody says, well, that's great, I support that tough on crime initiative or that education initiative, I'll vote for that. But they don't realize that the initiative had no source of funds for that.
Right.
So how are you going to find the funds? Well, you have to allocate it out of the existing budget, so something has to give.
Yeah.
And that's in essence what the problem is.
Okay.